please support us at patreon.com/battlegeekplus.
Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and the game we're going to talk about today is Resident Evil 0? Yeah, so Resident Evil 0 was quite a surprise. I remember as early as 2000, after I finished Code Veronica, I saw some previews of Resident Evil 0 on the N64, with early pictures showing Rebecca with a beret. Of course, my biggest concern was, is it going to have loading time like Resident Evil 2 on the N64? Of course, it was scrapped and then was moved to the Gamecube, which was the more obvious choice since the Gamecube was coming out very soon. So my first experience with this game back in 2002 was I went to a convention and there was a game room and some people were playing the Japanese version Biohazard 0, which had the English voice acting but Japanese text. And I saw people controlling both Billy and Rebecca on the train, but I didn't know anything that was going on. And then I think a month later the game actually came out in America. So how are you going to make a prequel to the original Resident Evil? And actually the great thing about the intro is you get to see the Stars Bravo team alive. Like, you get to see Kenneth is alive. You get to see Forrest Spire is not a zombie. You get to see Enrico, and he's not like, yeah. And then you see Richard, who hasn't been bitten by the snake yet. And then there's Kevin the pilot, and there's Edward Dewey. Edward Dewey, who was mentioned in the original Resident Evil PlayStation manual. And even before that, he was meant to be like an Eddie Murphy comic relief character in the original Resident Evil, which they didn't need because the game was comic relief on its own. And I remember bringing this over to a friend's house and he was like, "Is that the king of the zombies?" Well, he kind of was responsible for the outbreak in Resident Evil 1, so you can kind of say that, but more accurately, he's more of the Leech King. Don't worry, I'll explain who he is in a bit. So aside the zombies, the big bad enemies in this game are the leeches. And this game has a bit of a fascination with giant bugs. Like, you fight a giant scorpion on the train, like, holy shit, that thing is huge. And you fight really creepy leechmen, like leeches that come together to form human shapes, like, ugh. And you have a compatriot in this game, Lieutenant Billy Cohen, who is actually going to jail because he's accused of a murder he didn't do while he was in the Marines, and I actually found him pretty cool. You know, he's kind of the badass, handcuffed, former Marine hero, who sadly doesn't make another appearance after this game. Yeah, I actually would have liked the spin-off Billy Cohen, Zombie Hunter. And also the big gameplay mechanic is you get to switch between Rebecca and Billy at any time, but there are a lot of times you have to have Rebecca solve a puzzle there, have Billy solve a puzzle there. And the thing I actually don't like about this game is, unlike Resident Evil 2, which had a good flow, there is a lot of backtracking. A little less than Resident Evil Code Veronica, but there is still a lot of backtracking in Resident Evil 0. And there are a lot of moments where you have to leave one player behind to have one player solve a puzzle. You have to have one player like send a key up to the other player. There's a lot of puzzles like this, and it kind of disrupts the flow of the game, in my opinion. Which makes me glad they really improved the co-op in Resident Evil 5. And yeah, let's talk more about the enemy variety. Like, you have to fight killer monkeys in this game. Killer zombie monkeys called the Eliminators. I am not joking. And then you have giant frogs, then the leeches, the zombies, the dogs. Yeah, there are a huge variety of creatures in Resident Evil 0. And also you get to fight a tyrant, or more like a proto-tyrant. And actually what is pretty cool, you get to see Enrico down in the lab from Resident Evil 2, although you don't get to explore more of it, but it was a pretty cool throwback, or more of a pre-throwback to Resident Evil 2. And now, the big baddie, the big king of the zombies, like my friend called it, or I just call him the Leech King, Dr. James Marcus. Who the fuck is James Marcus? Yeah, so James Marcus was killed by Umbrella, and then William Birkin and Albert Wesker inherited his research, but then the big Queen Leech went down to Marcus's dead body, and then revived him and made him young, and it can turn him old, so he was the Leech King, King Leech Marcus. Although it was pretty cool that you do kill Marcus by sunlight. and luckily the battle isn't like super hard. Yeah, so after you beat the game, you access the bonus Leech Hunter, which I didn't really play a lot of because honestly, this game just felt like it dragged a lot. And of course, you do realize Rebecca has probably been awake for over 40 hours by the time she gets into the mansion in Resident Evil. Yeah, so Resident Evil 0, what do I really think of it? It's interesting, but I don't know if they really should have made it because it doesn't do that much to advance the story, although it does explain that James Marcus was, in fact, the perpetrator who infected the mansion lab. Out of revenge, I shall get revenge on Umbrella, and then the world will burn in hate! And if you do like the old school Resident Evils, I definitely recommend picking it up, although I just don't think it does much to advance the story like I mentioned before, and you can honestly skip it. Yeah, so you can get Resident Evil 0 pretty cheap on the Gamecube on eBay. It's not that expensive, although I do recommend getting the upgraded versions on the PC, the PS4, and the Xbox One. Yeah, so that wraps up this episode on Resident Evil 0. And if you have any memories about this game, make sure to leave those in the comments below. Take care.
Hey, you guys having fun here? Well, check us out on twitch.tv/BattleGeekPlus.